All right, today we're talking about podcast production. So everything having to do with podcast production, including short form video, video versus audio, how to edit podcasts, how to share your own thought leadership. I'm here today with Chad, who's going to be interviewing me. And so I'll be telling you my perspective on all these topics. So stay tuned.
Welcome to the Smart Business Revolution podcast, where we feature top entrepreneurs, business leaders, and thought leaders and ask them how they built key relationships to get where they are today. Now, let's get started with the show.
All right, welcome everyone. John Corcoran here. I'm the host of this show. And you know, every week we talk to smart CEOs, founders, and entrepreneurs from all kinds of companies. And if you check out the archives, we've got Netflix, Grubhub, Redfin, Gusto, Kinko's, lots of great episodes in there. And so you can check those out. But of course, today we're going to be doing something different. And before we get into that, this episode is brought to you by Rise25, where we help businesses to give to and connect to their dream relationships and partnerships. We do that by helping you to run your podcast. We're the easy button for any company to launch and run a podcast. So if you want to learn more, go to rise25.com. We've got a completely refreshed website that has lots of great content on there for you to answer all your questions. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Chad, and I'm excited to dive into these topics.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll just kind of start out with the main topic, which is podcast production services. Obviously, something you're very familiar with. You've probably been doing it as long as podcasting has almost been in existence. But after that amount of time in podcasting, what would you say separates a professionally produced podcast from one that maybe I just hold up my phone and record my thoughts into it?
Yeah, oh, well, yeah, that's a great question. So it has changed a lot because I remember listening to podcasts, 17, 18 years ago. There was one called Entrepreneur's Journey by Yaro Starak. That was a very early podcast that had no intro at the beginning. It was just him start talking and then he would interview people. And it was very primitive, but there wasn't a lot of competition back there. Now the table stakes are different. Like if you want to be taken seriously, if you want to interview people in your industry that are the thought leaders, that are the experts, if you want to interview prospective clients and they don't know anything about you, they're going to judge you based on the podcast. So you have to have better production quality, production values. It has to, have professional artwork. It has to have an intro and outro. These things sound intimidating, but they can get done. And once they're done, you'll be fine. You don't have to record in a professional podcast studio or anything like that. I record just in my office. I spend most of my time not recording podcast episodes. In fact, I just have a microphone over to the side and then I pull it out when it's time to record a podcast episode. So I would say that, it's very doable today because the tools are accessible, the software is accessible. And if you don't get stuck in the production process, which you shouldn't, we focus on B2B businesses. So, someone listening to this, if you're an executive, if you are C-suite, if you're an owner of a B2B business, it's not the best use of your time to get sucked into the production process. In fact, you should not at all. I spend no more than 30 seconds after every podcast episode uploading my recording, and that's it. I don't touch it after that. So I oversee production because I have a company that does that, but I don't get sucked into the weeds of it. And I think anyone who starts a B2B podcast who gets stuck in the weeds of doing the actual production rather than delegating it and focusing on the highest and best use of their time, it's not going to last very long.
So what would you say comes first? This may be a chicken or the egg question. Deciding to find somebody else to help you produce your podcast, or to say, okay, we're interested in podcasting, we're going to give this a whirl and maybe make a few of our own?
That's a great question. So some people are a shoot, fire, aim kind of person. Mm-hmm. And others are, methodical and they want to have everything lined up to a T. Sometimes they can take that to that extreme where they spend too much time thinking about it, planning it. I've talked to people that, been thinking about doing a podcast for 3 to 5 years. That's too long. So it's a question of who you are. With some people, I say, just get started like I did 17 years ago. Just start interviewing people over Zoom, and then you might find you really like it. You might find that it's a good tool and you want to take it up a notch and take it more seriously. And then you bring in a company like ours who's going to come professionalize it. So really, I think it depends on the personality. I can't say that 100% of the time people should do it a certain way because it really depends on them.
When a company decides to invest in podcast production services, maybe from a company like ours, what outcomes should they realistically expect?
When you make that decision to invest in podcast production services, then one, you have to be committed to it. You have to take it seriously. You have to realize that, this is going to be part of your business development. It's part of a referral marketing strategy. It's partly networking. It's partly professional development. It's partly personal development. It's all of those things. And you can't just put an hour once a month into all those different initiatives. In fact, you're probably spending a lot more time than that currently. And part of the reason that I believe a podcast saves you time is because it allows you to do all those things from the benefit of doing it from your home or your office. And so it actually will save you time when all that stuff happens. Um, so I'd say take it seriously. And then what do you expect? What you expect is that if you do take it seriously, then it can be the most valuable business development tool that you've ever used. And it also can be an amazing professional development tool because you will learn incredible things. And it's an amazing networking tool as well. As long as you're using the right strategy, as long as you have someone external who's holding your feet to the fire because we're busy, we have all kinds of different stuff happening, things tugging us in different directions. So you need someone to hold you accountable to that. And as long as you've got a production team that handles all the back end production so that you don't get sucked into that. If all those things are lined up, then it can be a phenomenal tool for you.
Yeah, I could see that. So, in terms of kind of the subtopics associated with video with podcast production, one of them is video services. I know Rise25 provides video services to clients who are interested. I don't watch a lot of B2B podcasts on my own time, but of the podcasts that I do watch, I almost all watch them all on video. And that didn't used to be the case for me.
Yeah.
How important has video become to podcast growth compared to maybe audio only shows?
It's become huge, I mean, maybe when I started, probably less than 5% of podcasts were video. And today it's well north of 50%. It's probably, I think probably 60 to 75% of our clients are doing video as well for a number of different reasons, because YouTube is the number two search engine out there. Also because of the reason that you identified, because people like being able to watch something at the same time. It helps capture their attention. And also it's super helpful from an SEO perspective because you're putting out content on the number two search engine. It's transcribable. Google loves to surface YouTube links when people search for different terms. So there's a number of really, important reasons why you want to do that. And also you can leverage it and create little short dynamic snippets and things like that and share them onto social media. So there's a lot of different reasons why people would do that. So most of the time these days, unless someone's really budget constrained, what I say is it makes total sense for you to also do video at the same time.
Are brands missing anything when they record podcasts without a video strategy in place?
I don't think that people are missing something. Sometimes it's better for people to start without video if they're going to be nervous about being on camera, or their guests are going to be nervous about being on camera, because it just removes one additional variable. If they're traveling frequently and they're worried about their different backdrops when they travel and they don't want to have that be an issue, then that can be helpful as well. But what I will say is that even if you don't publish the video, you should be doing the interview on video like we are here today over Zoom or some other tool so that you can see the person that you're talking to. One, it will make for a better interview because if there are times when you want to interrupt, they can see that. They can see that you want to interrupt, and people are less likely to drone on and on as they would if it was an audio only podcast. So that's one of the reasons to do it. And also you just want to build relationships with people. You're doing this for the purpose of connecting with clients, referral partners, strategic partners. And you can do that so much more authentically and in such a deeper way if you're doing the actual interview on video, regardless of whether you publish that video or not.
Is there something that makes video content more watchable when it comes to podcasts, or if the two people are there talking, that's pretty much good?
I think it boils down to personal preference, but I mean, I personally I'm different from you because I actually usually watch the videos. I usually listen. I'm usually driving,
Mm-hmm.
walking, riding the bike when I am listening to a podcast.
Hmm.
So I actually don't usually listen to video. But having said that, actually, a lot of the podcasts that I do consume have video also. So sometimes I'll turn it on my phone, I'll see it for a little bit, and then I'll walk around, I'll go make coffee or I'll go for a walk or something like that. And I'm still listening to it, but I'm not looking down at the video. So it gives flexibility because everyone consumes differently. You might watch it on video, I might listen to it, and having video gives you the option of doing either.
So video is one aspect of podcast production services. Another one is editing. A lot of people underestimate editing. What does professional podcast editing really do to a listener to really add to listener retention?
Well, most of the time, podcast editing needs to just be not noticeable. It needs to get out of the way. If you're noticing it, they're probably doing something wrong, especially in a B2B context. And secondly, you want to make it less complex. And so I made the mistake in the first early years of my podcast of having too much complexity when it came to the editing. And so I had multiple different files that needed to be tracked, and I'd lose track of different files, and I had to get them to the editor. And then they would send me an email, which I would miss that I hadn't send them the right file, and I would forget about it, and I'd see it a few weeks later. Jeremy helped me to revamp all of that, realize that it wasn't really materially adding anything. Or if it was, I had no evidence of it. It was only my assumption. You listen to other podcasts and you hear it done a certain way and you think, oh, that sounds cool. I'll do it my way, do it that way as well. But never mind the fact that you're listening to a super high budget entertainment podcast that can do those types of complexities. And when you're creating a podcast for a B2B purpose, it's not as meaningful. It doesn't matter as much.
So when people say, "Oh, it'd be nice to have editing services because they can take out all the times I say or make me sound smarter or something," is that
Yeah.
realistic, or is that a good way of thinking about editing?
I actually believe that not relying on that as a crutch has made me a better speaker.
Hmm.
I tried to say that very carefully, so I didn't actually insert an in there. It's never flawless. It's not perfect, and there's some people that have certain patterns of speech where they would really benefit from cutting out those things. But most of the time, I would say that it's too much of a crutch because it can create an episode that sounds really stilted and cut down and creates for people a feeling of there's something being cut out, and people will distrust a podcast. I've heard lots of people say that they can't listen to a podcast because it's edited too much, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so for as a host of a podcast, by not relying on editing or, saying that it will, that you're going to edit it extensively, it just simplifies the process for you. It also simplifies the process with the guest. So if you tell a guest, having done 1,500 episodes, I know if you tell a guest that, yes, we're going to edit it, they're probably going to stop themselves 7 times in the first 15 minutes and say, no, actually cut that out, but don't cut it out when I said this part. Cut it out when I said this part, and let me start over, and here we go. I'm going to start, and it's just like complete waste of time, And so you don't want to do that. I say to the guests, don't worry about it. This is an authentic medium. What people like about podcasting is that it's an authentic conversation between two people. You could get to be like a fly on the wall, and don't worry about excessive editing. And then that way people are less likely to cause those types of issues that just require excessive editing.
I used to produce a podcast for another company, and I would always tell the guests, okay, so if you screw up or something, you can just let me know, and we'll stop, and we'll start over from there. And she actually told me, she had to stop like 5 times. And she actually told me, I probably never would have had to stop if you hadn't told me that I could. I was like,
Yep.
I'll never do that again.
Yeah, yeah. And I often say to people, look, if something extreme happens, like a car crashes into your living room, we will stop. That's fine, but otherwise don't worry about it.
Sure. Thought leadership services. That's another service provided by Rise25. Just tell me about that in general.
So a lot of people, when they think of podcasts, they have certain assumptions, and they think that podcasts are, for example, just interview shows, or they are just entertainment shows. The truth is that it's the Wild West. You can do whatever you want. So I encourage people to do a lot of interviews on their own podcast because it's an incredible tool for networking and meeting people that you admire and trust and deepening relationships with clients and referral partners. However, in addition to that, it also is a great way for you to share your own wisdom and your own expertise. And you have years and years of wisdom and expertise that you can share. We call those thought leadership episodes. It's what we're essentially doing here today. And it is a really easy way on you for you to share something, some wisdom that you have, some expertise that you have. And I believe that it is really something that you should do with your own podcast because then you create an asset that you own and control. It could be answering frequently asked questions. It could be you talking about why you're different or unique or something that you do. We've gotten to a point where now we expect this sort of thing. We expect to be able to go and learn about someone. If someone gives you the name of a vendor or a service provider and says, "Hey, go work with, so and so," what do? We immediately Google it, or we go to ChatGPT and we search for that person's name. And if we can't find anything, it kind of like confusing. Like, wait, do I even want to give this guy a call? This woman a call? I mean, I'll go to YouTube frequently and I'll search up someone's name. I'll go to Spotify and I'll search up someone's name. And I expect to be able to find something and be able to, I want to hear like what they sound like. Does this sound like someone that I even want to have a conversation with? Do I even want to reach out to them? And if that doesn't exist, if that's not out there, you're kind of a ghost. So I say to people, you need to have these things out there, and doing a thought leadership on your own podcast around content with questions that you have some kind of reasonable control around or direction that you're focusing on is a great way to put content out there.
And then short form video. I know my wife just sits there and watches podcast shorts for like hours at a time.
Yeah.
How should podcasters be thinking about short form video differently than maybe just simply clipping long episodes?
There are some people that consume just short form videos. It's also a great way for podcast discovery. It's a great way to take the time that you're already spending on creating a podcast and to have it go further. So I'm a big fan of creating short little snippets from a podcast episode and sharing them on, LinkedIn, sharing them on different social channels. It's just, it's a way of kind of having your time go further. It also, another benefit to it that people don't think about is that from the guest perspective, it's a real benefit to them. So you're more likely to get guests to say yes to be a guest on your podcast when they know that you're going to create those assets as well. In fact, I've even talked to people that have been, in-demand speakers who've been on lots of different podcasts, and they will say that they will only say yes to a podcast guest invitation from someone who they know is going to be creating those digital shorts as well, those dynamic snippets. So that's a great thing to do. And the other thing you can do is that, like, look, we all get busy. We have different things going on. Sometimes there are stretches of time when you can't put out a podcast episode. If you put out those little shorts, no one will know the difference. And, Gary Vaynerchuk, I had on my podcast a long time ago. He's a big marketing expert. He's written a bunch of books and things like that. And I kind of had this assumption about him that he just does marketing nonstop because he pushes out a ton of marketing. His team does, partly because that's what he does. But I interviewed his right-hand man at one point, years after I had interviewed him. And his, right-hand man basically said that he's running his company 99% of the time. He's not creating marketing. You'd be shocked about that. And so these dynamic snippets have a way of making a perception that you are far more present and active and out there while you're doing the most important thing, which is running your business. So it's a great way of squeezing more hours out of the day.
I would think that if you've decided that those are going to be something you prioritize, that having somebody do podcast production for you would be particularly valuable because that can be pretty time consuming.
Oh, absolutely. This is not something, again, this is a theme here with me. It's not something you should be spending your time on. And again, I'm the biggest, most guilty person of it. I'm a recovering perfectionist, recovering lawyer, recovering perfectionist, spent way too much time in the early years thinking that I needed to touch all the different pieces on the podcast production process. It wasn't until I let go of that. It wasn't until I realized that the most important thing was me building relationships and letting go of the rest that I was able to get more value out of my podcast. So I would say the same thing to others. let it go. Let a team like ours or one that you trust to handle the production pieces, because your time is more valuable doing other things.
Okay, sounds good. Hey, John, always great to talk to you. Very interesting and informative. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much, Chad.
So long, everybody. Thanks for listening to the Smart Business Revolution podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.